Right, so I'm going to start by trying to excuse the reason I've been quite so erratic lately, because this is technically the time of year when the sun is closest to us. Normally, that isn't a problem because it is covered with clouds. Normally you do not see the sun much at this time of year, at least not in the afternoons, which keeps things relatively cool even though it's very, very humid. At the moment there is a system coming up from the south which has very little humidity in it, so we've got our humid air close to the ground, not forming any clouds, and we've got blazing blue skies with the sun very close overhead and making things very, very hot, which makes it quite hard to get a lot of things done. So today's planting is starting with yesterday's, which is going to be going into the aromatic area, which is already suffering a little bit because the chickens have been numerous lately, and with more roosters than usual there's a lot more kicking and digging than usual, which means that even though they cannot eat the eucalyptus, they have tried to dig it up. They have not tried, however, to dig up the duplicate of tonight's planting. We're going to start tonight's planting in reverse, so we're going to be starting with the Dracaena fragrans, which is the marker plant going in. This is going a little way away from a hedge just to sort of make sure no one walks between it and the hedge. This is going to deform the pathway into a little bit of a curve here, and also, yeah, stand out and mark that there are things planted here, so don't stand on them. Next to that, I'm going to be putting what looks like it might be today's tree, but is not in fact. This is a garlic vine. I do know the name, but it has gone from my head. This is a Brazilian plant, and you can use the leaves for cooking, and they have this wonderful garlicky aroma. The whole plant has a wonderful garlicky aroma, and as I'm transplanting it, it is just gorgeous. But then we're going to really throw this whole aromatic area off by planting one of the Titanarums. This isn't Amorphophallus, which is the typical Titanarum people know. This is a slightly smaller flower, but similar aroma. This is Anchormanes, which is one of the native ones. I do think we have some native Amorphophallus. A friend of mine germinated some of these and gave me 3 little seedlings, which the pouch rats have tried to eat and decided they didn't like the taste of, so I'm hoping the mole rats will also find distasteful, so I'm not going to be bricking this one in. I am keeping the other 2 in pots as insurance just in case, until I know. But this forms a beautiful, gigantic flower which you just don't want to smell too closely. It's not actually that powerful unless it's a very hot day and you're very close to it. This was going to be a tiny piece of the tiger tooth aloe going in. This is what was actually kicked up from where I planted the yesterday, today and tomorrow tree, by the chickens, of course. So then that is going to go in and hopefully form a little bit of a succulent ground cover if the chickens will tolerate it here. I am going to put a few pieces of dead twig around the Anchormanes just to keep the chickens from kicking that, because it's quite special and I don't want them destroying it out of sheer chickenly spite. But then finally we are on to today's tree, which is Murraya konigi, which is sometimes called curry leaf or curry bush. The Hindi name is curry pata, which you can see with pata being leaf why that would become curry leaf. It's a wonderful, fragrant, aromatic tree. It's just beautiful. So Murraya is a member of the rue family, Rutaceae, and we are very much rueing the day today because today's planting is going to start with another species of rue, which is probably the most recognizable genus of rue. So rue itself, it's a small annual herb, I think. I've never actually seen one as far as I know, unless I've trodden on it without knowing somewhere in Europe. But this is Citrus X Gembiri. So this is the rough lemon, which is probably the most widely planted citrus in the tropics. It's certainly the most widely grown one in Zambia, and it's used as a rootstock. So the fruit isn't often seen, but the tree is very often present throughout the tropics. So this is a wonderful, I think slightly sweeter than a true lemon fruit. It doesn't have the pomelo genetics as far as I know, so that does make it significantly different to a true lemon, but it can be used in many of the same ways, and I find its rind is much more usable. You can use it a lot deeper before you get to an unpleasantly flavoured part. This is going in where I had originally planted an avocado, which gave up the ghost a little while ago and did come off the list then. Hopefully, because the Calico prolifera around here has really lived up to its name and has proliferated quite a lot, that will create a nice solid ground cover, so when the sun does go back to the north, which is where it really upset the avocado, this will not only have had more time to settle in than the avocado did, but it will also have already got that nice established ground cover. Now, replacing an avocado tree that had been transplanted from where it popped up in the lawn, so it wasn't any great cost to me to plant it, isn't that upsetting, but we have lost a few other things over this year, as you may have noticed if you've been watching much. One of the more upsetting ones of those is tonight's planting. So tonight we are going to be removing a pecan who the stem was looking fine. It wasn't doing anything, but there was definitely some life in it until about a week ago when something finished off the roots and it just toppled over. Now this is in stark contrast to another tree which I dug up today to see if I needed to replace it with something, and found out that although the stem is completely dead all the way down to the base, the roots are actually very much still alive, and so I replanted that, which isn't surprising because that one, everywhere else I planted it in previous years, even if I've completely forgotten about it and not watered it at all, it's usually turned up again a few years later when I remember that it exists. So this is Cochitzapotle, which is the first type of sapoti that I ever planted.
It's not one I would ever really think of as a sapote. It's not that closely related to the Sapataceae or to the Diospyros, which is the original sapote, the Thlixapotl or black sapote, or chocolate pudding fruit. This is sometimes called a Mexican apple instead, and it is another member of the Rutaceae, so it's another rue. Because this area is still quite exposed, it does have some small trees coming up by themselves, some native trees and some guava trees, but because it's still quite exposed and I want to make sure those roots stay well protected, so if the top does die back again, it can come back up from the base, I'm going to be adding some extra pieces of aloe arborescens to the original planting here, but that should be everything. Right, so that should be everything for today. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed it, and if you haven't enjoyed it, thank you for watching anyway. Please tune in again tomorrow, or at some point in the future, because I will hopefully be planting something else tomorrow, and I will be uploading that at some point when I have the time. We'll see.